In this lesson, we'll finish up our course by talking about macros and how we can use them to automate tasks that we'd like to repeat again and again. So here in ZBrush, we do have the ability, if there are certain steps or actions that we take repeatedly, we can actually automate those into a macro and then repeat those using a button or a hotkey. Okay, so if we go ahead and look at our menu here for macro, you can see there's a button, new macro, reload all macros, and then there's a sub palette here for just macros where all of our macros will be listed. There's a couple already there. So what we want to do is create a new macro, and we'll use a couple of examples to show this. So let's say that every time I open ZBrush, I want to take out the gradient from my canvas and I want to set the background to black. Okay, so if I wanted to do that, I could go ahead and go up to document. We'll take the range down to 0 and then we'll select black, or select the color and then drag over to black, and there we go. So it's not too bad, but let's say we want to actually automate that. So we'll go ahead and set that back up. Set some kind of a gray, doesn't really matter. So let's say that's our gradient. So what we want to do is create a new macro for this. So let's go to macro, new macro. And it's going to ask us if we want to fully initialize ZBrush now and whenever this script is executed. If you do, then you can go ahead and say yes. If not, say no. And so now we can go ahead and it's recording. So I'm going to go ahead and go to range, set the range to 0, set my back color to black, go back to macro, and now I want to end the macro. So this will give me an option to save my macro. Now if I want it to load up with ZBrush, I want to put it in the Z Startup Macros folder. So here's our ZBrush folder. We'll go to Z Startup, go into the macros folder, and we can create our own special folder. So I'm going to just drop these into a DT folder, and I'm just going to call this something like background. So we'll go ahead and save that. Now you can see that under macros we have a new section here for DT macros called background. So let's see what happens. So go ahead and I'm going to change the range, change the color to whatever, and then go ahead and go to macro, hit our background, and you can see it automatically sets that to black. So now I can include that with my menu. So let's go ahead and go to preferences, configuration, enable customize. Then we'll go to macro. We've got our background button, so Control Alt to drag this over, drop it into my DT menu, and go ahead and turn off customize. And so now I can go ahead and whenever I want, hit that background button. Okay, you can also set a hotkey for that, just as we did in a previous lesson. Okay, so this is a really nice way of just automating things that you find yourself doing over and over. And it could be anything. It could be changing something with the display. Let's say that there's a common thing that people will do, and that is to take a cube. And if you look at that cube, it's actually kind of a sphere that's cube shaped. So what you can do is you want to go ahead and create kind of a cube that's the same on all sides. So let's go ahead and I am going to drop this. Oops. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a macro. Say new macro. And this time we'll go ahead and initialize. And now I want to bring on a cube. So I want to draw a cube out, go to edit mode, okay, and in our subtool I want to go ahead and convert this to a polymesh, and then I want to go down to remesh and then set this to its lowest amount, and I want to go ahead and turn the polish down. Let's go ahead and remesh all. Okay. And then I want to go ahead and delete the initial cube. So delete that cube. And if we take a look at the polyframe, there you can see it. Now let's say I want to go ahead and reduce that. So I'll reconstruct subdivision, delete higher, and let's say that's my cube. So now I'll end the macro. And I'll call this something like cube create. I'll save it. So now whenever I want to bring on a cube, let me change my background again. Whenever I want to bring on a cube that I've created here, I can go into my macros, cube create, and it'll create our cube for us to begin working with. Okay, and again, you can drag that over as a button if you want to. Okay, maybe I also want to use something like polygroup masking. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to select part of this to make a couple of different polygroups on this cube. And if we go under brush, under auto masking, there's this mask by polygroups. So what I could do would be to make a macro where this is on and then make a macro where this is off. So I could, whenever I'm doing my sculpting, I can decide whether I want to affect just the polygroup that I'm on or whether I want to affect all polygroups. And so let's go ahead and create a macro for that. So go macro, new macro. Now I'm going to go into brush, change this mask by polygroup all the way to 100, and then in the macro. And I'm going to call this poly mask on. And save that. And then let's create a new macro. Okay. And this time we'll go into brush, turn it all the way off, and end the macro. And then we'll call this one poly mask off and save that out. All right, so now what we can do is if we go ahead and grab our move, you can see I'm affecting all of the polygroups equally. Okay, but if I want to turn polymask on, actually add those to my menu here. So let me go ahead and enable customize, go to macro, and then I'm just going to go ahead and drag these in here somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. So it's polymask on, or polymask off, polymask on. And then if you wanted to bring your cube over there, cube button over there as well. All right, so polymasking obviously is not on right now, so I can go ahead and turn it on. And let me see if I can. On. So with that on, you can see I can get that just that border, but you can see if I start over here, I can't really do anything over on this side. Same thing here. I can start here and I can get that transition, but I can't get over to the other side. Whereas if I turn it on, or off rather, I can come all the way across and do whatever kind of sculpting I want. Okay, so if you want to really get in deep, you can use Z-scripting to create your own plugins and really script a lot of complex actions. But macros are a really easy way to just select or choose different actions or sequences that you want to do often and automate those in the form of a button here. And then these buttons can be put into your interface somewhere, or you can assign hotkeys or shortcuts to those buttons and really automate things and speed things up when you're working in ZBrush. Okay. All right. So hopefully you've got a little bit out of the last hour or so. It's not really the end-all be-all, but wanted to just cover a lot of the tools and tips that can save you some time when working with ZBrush. A lot of times when we go through our ZBrush courses, we try to keep everything default so that everyone can follow along very easily, and so we don't often customize things too much. So, but I want you to be aware that you can do that, and there are certain things that you can go in and create your own menus and create the interface that really works well for you as you start to build your projects in ZBrush. So take advantage of all of those tips to speed up your workflow. You get a lot more done and be able to move on to even more great projects. So I hope you've enjoyed the last hour or so going through methods for working faster in ZBrush. We'll see you next time.